Thanks, Ceann Cordia. Taoiseach, last year around this time, your then government introduced the Residential Tenancies Bill, to much fanfare it has to be said. Among its provisions, rent certainty measures were introduced on the 4th of December 2015. They weren't perfect by any means, but they were something. Their effect was that landlords couldn't increase rents for a 2-year period. However, there was a retrospective element to these measures. For tenancies which were in existence in December 2014, the clock started ticking from then. Those tenants had protection for a 2-year period, but that 2 years is up next week on the 3rd of December. If rent certainty measures are not extended urgently for those very tenants, many more families will face massive hikes in their rent, particularly in the case of property controlled by the institutional landlords and by vulture funds. The longer we go without an extension, the more renters that will be affected, and the numbers will be increasing week by week and month by month. It is inevitable that the crisis in homelessness will become even more acute if the government does not act urgently. Even with these limited controls, rents generally went up by about 12% over the past year, and they are forecast to go up by at least the same amount in the coming year. So for those families who lose their rent certainty, who lose that next week and in the coming weeks, they will likely face huge rent hikes in excess of 20%. Now, Taoiseach, you need to act urgently on this matter. For those families whose rent protection expires on the 3rd of December next week, you must extend their rent freeze to prevent them facing huge hikes in their rent, which will inevitably lead to many more families facing homelessness. Do you realise that a couple of nights ago, on a very cold winter night, there were 210 people sleeping rough in the Dublin area alone? Those shameful numbers are set to increase exponentially from next week on, unless you take urgent action. Taoiseach, will you act now to prevent the situation becoming even worse? If you don't, it is inevitable that we will see more families on our streets over the coming weeks and months.
Thank you, Deputy Shortall. Taoiseach.
Well, I'm aware of the figure that Deputy Shortall mentions in terms of homeless people on the streets. I think it's to be welcome, though, that there's an extra 200 beds going in there now, which brings the total amount to about 1,800 here in the city. Obviously, it's a short-term measure dealing with the supply issue, and Minister Coveney has already set out, as part of the housing action plan, the 5 pillars and the money to back them, by which the question of supply is being dealt with. Clearly, the issue that you raise about rents and a rent stability to end on the 3rd of December is a matter of concern to the Minister. I've already said, Deputy Shortall, that Minister Coveney will bring before the House here very shortly a comprehensive rental strategy dealing with the question of rents, the opportunity to have longer leases in respect of tenanted dwellings where people can rent for a longer period, and a number of other measures that he hopes to bring before the House. Now, I wasn't actually aware that the issue that you raise is fading out on the 3rd of December. I'll bring that to the attention of the Minister immediately.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Ordinary, Taoiseach, that you weren't aware of that, or that your Cabinet colleagues weren't aware of it and weren't planning action to avoid a greater catastrophe in relation to our homelessness situation. You need to act urgently in the coming days, Taoiseach, to address that matter. Last week in the Irish Times it was reported that David Ehrlich of the Irish REIT made the following comments in talking about the Irish rental situation. He said, "It's a great market We've never seen rental increases like this in any jurisdiction that we're aware of. And he went on to say, I truly feel badly for the Irish people. But of course, he's answerable to the REIT's investors, not to the tenants that are in his properties. The government are making assumptions based on a functional market, when it is in fact a completely abnormal market, and it's abnormally good for investors like Irish REIT.
Thank you, Deputy Shortall.
We're told there's a comprehensive strategy coming for the rental market. We don't know when that's going to happen, but Taoiseach, it certainly won't come quickly enough to address the imminent dangers that renters will be facing from next week. You must commit here today to address this looming problem for so many families over the coming weeks and months. Will you give a commitment to do that here now today, Taoiseach?
Thank you.
I've already given you a commitment. Sometimes when you tell the truth in here, you get pilloried for it as well. I said I'd bring that to the attention of the Minister forthwith. And I made the point to you that part of his action plan is to provide 1,500 rapid build units, 1,600 vacant units sourced by the Housing Authority, an expanded HAP, homeless tenancies, 550 this year and 1,200 in 2017. I heard you, Deputy. I heard you. I said I'd bring it to the attention of the Minister forthwith. That means immediately. We'll do that. And I said to you that he intends to bring in a comprehensive rental strategy here to the House in the next very short period. I'm quite sure that will be part of that. We pointed out the extra emergency beds that are being made available that brings it to 1,800 here in the city. I got the same count as you did just the other night. Obviously, we'd like to think that you can have a situation where this year, no more than last year, that unless somebody wanted to be on the streets, that they have a roof over their head and a bed in which to survive. There are some people, Deputy Shortall. There are some people, Deputy Shortall.
Deputy, please.
There are some people.
Taoiseach, could you conclude?
There are some people, Deputy Shortall, who don't want to come off the streets, as you're well aware. Now, you've mentioned a point here in respect of certainty for those tenants whose freeze runs out on the 3rd of December. I'll bring that to the attention of the Minister directly after I leave the chamber.
Thank you very much, Taoiseach.